Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. Couple of things to cover here, so we'll get straight into it. First of all, to address the recent CBR article that's going around the fandom a little bit. It obviously has, I think, what looks like a kind of interesting headline, but I do think this story, there's not much to it in terms of news. Like, I would barely consider this to actually be news, because it sort of alludes to stuff, what they're trying to get at here, but it's not really a direct mention from Mike about the upcoming series. So, you can see here the way they word it. It's all going to be connected. Avatar: The Last Airbender creator teases upcoming story arc for the next Avatar. Sounds very exciting, but then when you look at what actually happened, not so much. So this all comes from this illustration department podcast that Mike was on. So it's basically an interview here, and he was answering questions, I think, from the host's son in most cases, if I remember correctly. The actual host was on, of course, but I think the son pops in at certain times as well. So where the news comes from is that the son asks a question that's basically like, they were talking just in general about like Aang and Korra, and how they did kind of the transition from Aang into Korra, and how, of course, Korra is a very different character to Aang, and that was purposeful, so they had a very different avatar. But also that Korra has to deal with sort of the ramifications of what happens during the end of like the last Avatar's era. That's how they do Avatar generational storytelling. And so the question sort of comes up of like, basically the host kind of asks, what is the kind of plan for doing, are you going to do the same thing as you go from like Korra basically into the next Avatar? I forget the exact wording on it, but it's certainly asking about content going into the future after Korra. And so what Mike says as his answer is very quickly, oh, it's all going to be connected. You'll see there's connections with the new stuff. That's the news, apparently, is that he said that in response to, like, are you going to continue to do generational storytelling as we go into basically the next Avatar? And sure, the fact that he sort of answers the question in a way that says, yes, there will be connections, sort of is a half, not really confirmation that I guess maybe the new series he is kind of alluding to as being the next Avatar. Because obviously, officially, that series has not been announced. We have leaks and stuff like that. It's very clear that's what it's going to be, but it's not been officially announced, and that's why Mike doesn't really talk about it. But he's highlighting that, yeah, look, it's all connected. The new projects, they're basically keeping up continuity. That's effectively all he's saying here. Is that in the same way that Korra acknowledged what happened in Aang, and every other Avatar has acknowledged the previous one before, Yang Chen acknowledges Zito, all the way up to, Roku acknowledges Kyoshi, Aang, Roku, and so on. The same will be true for Avatar Pavi, I guess, acknowledging what happened in Korra, and that's directly part of the leaks, basically. That's part of the big mystery, is what happened at the end of the Korra era to kind of make the world this way, and how do we get it back to the way it once was, seems to be the plot of the new series. But obviously, in this podcast, he doesn't say any of that. He just vaguely says, yeah, it's all going to be connected. So you can view this as a kind of half confirmation that, like, yeah, that's what they're going for, because he doesn't deny that, like, he doesn't say, like, oh, wait, what are you talking about? What makes you think there's a project about the new Avatar or anything like that? He doesn't say that. He just says, yeah, it's all connected. So read into that what you will. I don't really think it's news, unfortunately. There is a point at which I think there's a little bit more kind of, maybe the better quote from Mike from this is about the art style. This gets brought up. Again, they talk about the kind of consistency of the art style from Avatar into Korra, and how, yeah, it's different in a way, but it's still fundamentally the Avatar art style. And so the question is basically given to Mike, basically, are you going to keep the art style the same, or is there any plans to maybe do a different art style for like future projects, basically? And Mike actually gives like a proper answer here, where he kind of says that, yeah, the art style is always kind of going to be the anime influenced style that Avatar has. The difference that you might see between projects is basically going to be the level of detail. So I think he doesn't really explore that in a great level of detail, but I think what he's trying to say there is effectively that, of course, the movie is going to have kind of movie level animation and it's going to feel super detailed. The series is still going to be detailed in the way that Avatar and Korra are, but maybe not as much as the movie. And then maybe if there is something like a kid's show or something like that, a smaller scale series, maybe that will have less detail again. But he makes sure to emphasize that, like, he doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to see an Avatar series with, like, that kind of blobby, basic art style that you see for certain kids shows. Highlighting that, like, it's all going to look like Avatar is, I think, the takeaway from what he says there. I do think the podcast is kind of interesting. If you haven't seen many Mike and Brian interviews, or many recent ones, it's maybe worth listening to. I haven't listened to it in full, but the clips of it I've listened to have seemed pretty interesting. But some of it is, I think, relatively repetitive if you've seen quite a few interviews with him. So, yeah, kind of half news, not really. The headline makes it seem kind of interesting that, like, he teases the upcoming story arc, but he doesn't really. He just points out the obvious that, like, yeah, we acknowledge the history of the world, especially Avatar to Avatar. That's all he says, that they're not changing that, of course. And it's really just the idea, well, because he doesn't deny the future Avatar, I guess that's what he means. But it's just a weird situation overall. Moving on. Of course, City of Echoes has been announced, a new Avatar novel series. I covered this. I was actually the one to basically point this out to the fandom, which is always exciting. But a few details here, just because so much has been happening. If you note the description for this, and on many websites, it mentions that there are illustrations, apparently. Black and white illustrations throughout. What does this mean? I believe this has appeared on some of these books before. So I wouldn't immediately rush to assume that this means it's going to be done kind of like a light novel, where like every 30 pages or so there's a picture. I guess that at the very least, there probably is an illustration somewhere in the book. Some of the books, of course, do have a few illustrations right at the end. We've had that before, but some of them haven't really had any. So this could be a wide, broad range of things, but it's just like, hey, they list it as having illustrations, so something to keep an eye out for. Worth noting, for sure. Who knows? Maybe because it is a new series of books, maybe it will be more visually focused. Maybe they feel that because they're doing more minor characters, maybe they need to have a few more visuals inside, which I think would be a good choice overall. I think we all would appreciate a few more visuals associated with the novel, so we have official character designs immediately. But that's that. Continuing on with news about City of Echoes, we do have an exclusive edition announced. So Barnes & Noble for America and Indigo for Canada have an exclusive edition of this book. Basically, it is the same edition. I guess it will just have a different sticker. But what the description for this deluxe exclusive edition is it includes a luxe cover with foil accents, a unique foil case stamp, and an 8-page bonus scene. So basically, the cover is going to be slightly fancier, a little bit of foiling maybe, but ultimately the big thing is just, yes, it will have an 8-page bonus scene. Now what this should be is an 8-page deleted scene or deleted chapter with, I guess, commentary, maybe explaining why it didn't end up in the book. I'd be stunned if this actually was just like extra, like, canon content, like this is just like additional content. But we'll see what happens, of course, when the book actually releases. Like I said, this is mostly exclusive for Barnes & Noble in America and Indigo in Canada. I guess you can find a way to order it from either of these two places, but I don't think it's really offered in other countries, the exclusive edition. But we'll see what happens. I'll cover the exclusive stuff when I get access to it as well. But just worth noting here, I'll have a link to both of these in the description if you are from America or Canada and want to order it. So there's that. Final thing on this is just that I believe there is an audiobook version of City of Echoes coming. It's just, I think there's some weirdness happening with regards to the placeholder book that this was known as versus it now being officially announced. The reason there's a 404 error on this page is because this was an active page a few days ago. But if I want to read out the URL here, it's blackstonelibrary.com/untitled amulet YA action series 1. That's what this was previously known as, because it was up on the Abrams site for a while like that. So I think what's happened here is just that they haven't quite gotten around to putting the listing for the City of Echoes audiobook up with Avatar Legend City of Echoes as the URL. And previously, this definitely was up because I checked this a few days ago and it was there. So yeah, I'm pretty confident there is an audiobook and it is just listing issues that mean there's no page up for it right now. But we're still in the initial days after it's been announced. The audiobook stuff always tends to be just a little bit behind the actual hardcover release, but just worth noting there. And then we're getting into the kind of final stuff here, which is just this. Lauren Montgomery on Instagram posted this Instagram story, which thanks to Brittany for screenshotting this and sending it to me. So this is Lauren Montgomery, the director of Aang the Last Airbender. She went to Australia to visit Flying Bark Animation, who of course are the animation studio for Aang the Last Airbender. So the director went to the animation studio to check on the production, I guess. What exactly the details were of that, we're not really sure. Like, what stage of production was it or anything like that. I assume this is pretty normal. Does it mean anything from a news perspective? I'm not overly sure. But it's also a case where, like, hey, the director publicly saying, like, she went to the animation studio, that's kind of interesting because a lot of it has been kept secret, and it's just a feeling of, like, things are beginning to get a little bit more open about just highlighting that this is something that's getting into, I guess, the final stages of production. So I don't think there's too much to read into here, but yeah, just something nice to see, and hopefully the movie gets properly announced at some point soon, and that's the big thing. And speaking of potential announcements, we do have to talk about some speculation for the big Avatar Anniversary Day, which of course is coming up February 21st, 2025. That would mark 20 years since February 21st, 2005, which is the day Avatar aired for the first time. It properly made its debut, the start of the franchise. This is a very notable anniversary, 20 years overall. And especially it happening in the year that is the build-up year, the year where we expect marketing to begin for the new kind of relaunch of Avatar stuff under Avatar Studios. It feels like a big enough anniversary to where surely they can't just treat this the way they've treated other recent anniversaries where it's just a non-event. It feels like you have to make a little bit of an event out of it and announce something. One thing that is actually possible that, like, feels borderline like it might actually happen is this, and I mentioned this just because it'd be weird not to, given that there have been recent rumors that suggest that the final unannounced set of the year for Magic the Gathering is going to be an Avatar set. They have a preview panel at their Magic Con Chicago happening on the day of the anniversary, Friday, February 21st, 2025. They're having a product preview panel at their official Magic convention. Very exciting stuff. If you read this, highly anticipated preview panel, you'll be among the first to see new cards from the upcoming set, Tarkir Dragonstorm, and receive an in-depth look at the set's design and world building. Plus, we can't wait to share what else Magic has in store for 2025, including another glimpse at Edge of Eternities and perhaps even a couple other surprises. So they mentioned the idea there will be surprises, and if you look at what was announced at their last kind of, I suppose, big thing, they announced everything except the final set of the year. So it's not a surprise that a Spider-Man set is coming, or that there's a Final Fantasy set. You'll note that they're mentioning Edge of Eternity is there. Ether Drift is out at this point. They're going to directly show cards from this. So I'm assuming some of the surprises will probably be showing off some stuff related to these two. But at the very least, I think the announcement or confirmation that the final set of the year is Avatar, and the panel happening on the anniversary day, feels so perfect that this is lined up in this way. And I do believe that the Avatar rumors are true. A lot of people on the Magic side of things really seem to be running with the idea that it's basically all but confirmed. So I think it will be a nice thing to do. Am I expecting to see card reveals for Avatar? No. But I think just the direct confirmation on Magic side that we're doing Avatar is a big thing for later in the year. Just knowing that much later this year, last set of the year will be Avatar, and will be a few weeks out maybe from the movie, and there's a big Magic set coming out. That's big. That's a big crossover, because Magic is like the trading card game basically. It's like the original one. So worth noting that for sure. So the idea is like, yeah, UUB is heavily rumored to be Avatar. And this would be a massive piece of news if it was to happen. Like, if this is all we got for the anniversary day is just this Magic announcement, I'd be pretty happy. If we don't get anything, I think it is going to be honestly disappointing. Like, I don't think it's us getting our expectations out of line. There is just a sense right now where, hey, when are you finally actually going to start marketing this? Like, the movie's barely announced. Like, I think it's a 50-50 shot if Avatar fans know that there's new content coming out and what the first project actually is. We saw a little bit of that on the interview from back here. One of the people on the podcast was just like, oh, I'm looking forward to the new series. And Mike is just like, yeah, the first project, the movie. And then the guy's like, oh, I forgot about that. And then he says, that's this year, right? Not realizing it's been delayed into next year. Mike mumbles something in the background. It's a funny little exchange there, just to highlight that this is where we're still at. No one knows the information on this stuff, and it's really, really funny. But yeah, that's the situation we have here with the news. So let me know what your thoughts are on all of this stuff. Do you think there's anything in what he said here? I really, really don't. City of Echoes possibly having illustrations throughout, whatever that means. At least a couple of illustrations, maybe. Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. Are you going to be getting this from Indigo or Barnes & Noble? Thoughts on maybe an audiobook? Likely confirmed. I think it is going to happen. Does the Lara Montgomery post visiting Flying Bark mean anything to you? And of course, what are your expectations for the anniversary day? 20th anniversary for Avatar. Likely thing at this point maybe is the confirmation of a Magic set for Avatar. We'll see if Avatar actually does any news themselves, but you know, that might be asking too much for whatever reason. But stuff's finally beginning to happen in the year. Like, this was a major announcement, and now we're only a few weeks away from the comics. Like, we're only like 2 weeks away from the Mako comic, and then like basically 2-3 weeks after that, the Ashes of the Academy comic is out. We're finally starting to get the year going here. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.